Hello everyone, and welcome back to Rob Races and Rebuilds. Since you've seen me last, I have actually sold the red FG2, and now I'm in a real selling mood to start getting rid of some of my projects. So, next on the chopping block, the rally car. Yep, that's right, we're selling it. But in order to sell this thing, I need to do a little bit of work to it to get it to a point where someone might actually want to buy it. So, why don't we quickly go over all the little issues we need to change, and then we'll just get right into it. Exhaust system. There isn't one. We're going to install that MagnaFlow. Whoever buys this car, I don't think they give a shit whether it has a MagnaFlow or stock exhaust. Next, stock airbox. There's nothing wrong with that, but I want to keep this stock airbox for a different project, so I'm going to throw on this engine short ram hot air intake. So that way I can keep the nice OEM parts and we'll sell it with the short ram. Whoever gets it with the short ram will probably be happy that it makes cool VTEC noises anyways. Number 3, the driver's side inner fender is kind of broken. We need to fix that. Number 4, put the interior back together. So that'll include, once the exhaust is in and we plug in our O2s, we'll have to put our center console back in. And then we'll throw a stock shift knob and stock shift boot in it. And another thing is, I would like to rob this steering wheel for another project because it's in better condition. So I'll probably take this steering wheel and put in one that has some wear at the top here. Because whoever ends up with this car probably will not care, as previously mentioned. Next, install this stock motor mount. This is a rear lower. Currently the car has a Hasport mount in it. The next thing on the list would be the audio. So for some reason the stereo in this car doesn't work. I'm not sure why. One of my leading theories is that the subwoofer is missing and nothing is plugged in there. So I don't know if it needs to see a complete circuit for things to work. It's kind of a Hail Mary, but I might try that because I have a spare sub. So, but that's low on the list of importance. It'd be nice to sell it with a working stereo, but we'll see. We also need to rotate the tires front to back, as they were brand new, but since they've done one rallycross event, the fronts are a little more chewed up. So I'd like to switch them and put the freshies on the front. And then I think last but not least, maybe we'll wipe some of the dirt off this thing and then see if we can sell it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Gotta get to work. Rob Races and Rebuilds fun fact number 1. This hideous orange mat, I actually got that with this car when I bought it. So when I got this car, the battery had died and it was locked and the key would not open the door. So we had to break the window to get in it. And I didn't really give a shit because I had a bunch of spare windows at home and it was a crappy car anyway. So I ended up smashing it with a hammer and I put this mat under the door to try and catch all the glass so it wouldn't be on Buddy's driveway. If I still have the clip, I'll insert it here. Anywho, that concludes today's history lesson. Let's put this exhaust in this car. All right, exhaust is on, buttoned up, and is officially the nicest part of the car. On to the next task, which is going to be the cold air intake. Since I've jacked the car up and it's in our face, we'll just get that done. So I don't really care about the snorkel in the bumper, but I just want this hooky piece right here, the whole air box and the main tube. So I'm gonna start getting that pulled out so that we can get the engine one in. But we are gonna have to swap over a couple hoses, like this little bypass hose and whatnot. We'll steal so that we can keep this weird crossover pipe for now anyways. I don't know that we will use it on the future project, but I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I'm gonna throw you guys on time lapse and we'll rip this thing out of here. All right, old intake is out. I made a bit of a mess with coolant. It started to run down the skid plate and onto the floor. That little crossover tube that goes to the throttle body dumped more than I expected. I don't know why, I didn't think it would, but so I kind of had to rush over, pull the one off of there, and now it's on here, so it's no longer leaking. But these little clamps on this crossover tube don't seem to pinch very well, so I dug through my miscellaneous bin and I got 2 of these little gear or worm clamps. So I'm going to put those on so that it should never pop off. Should be a good fix. So I'm going to do that quick and then we can put the intake in. All right, it's intake time. I still have to tighten down all the clamps, but intake is loosely sitting in there. We've got it sitting on the pedestal mount back there, and then our hoses are connected. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I did not buy this intake. This came on that car when I bought it, but I would recommend you don't buy this intake, to be honest. Not only is it a hot air intake, your filter's next to your header or your exhaust manifold, so you're just sucking in a lot of heat, but it really doesn't fit that good. You can see the boot. Again, I haven't tightened it down yet, but you can see the angle of the boot is not square to the throttle body, meaning that the design of the tube, it just doesn't quite sit nicely. So fitment is not great. Down here, I actually had to bend this lower wiring mounting tab out of the way so that it wasn't contacting the filter. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems kind of cheaply done for the cost of the intake. So I wouldn't recommend you buy one, but it'll make cool noises if that's what you want. And that's all I want on this car, is make cool noises, and I wanted the stock airbox. So it's a win-win for me. Anywho, I'm going to tighten these clamps down, and then we'll move on to the next task. Okay, next on the list is this fender liner, which was a casualty of Rallycross. So right here, it broke off, and then it just, I don't know, pulled all the other clips or hangers or screws or zip ties. All of it got ripped out. I want to put this back in because if you look right there, there's a big gaping hole into the engine bay. So if you're ripping through mud and dirt and rocks and snow, you don't really want that stuff getting shoveled into the engine bay. And that corner just so happens to be right where the ECU is, so we don't want that. So we will stuff this back in there, and then along the back here where it's actually like sheared right off, I might just drill holes in both and we'll just zip tie it. Back here I'm not as worried about sealing it, it's more so that front zone that I want to be sealed. So let's get crafty. You kind of get the gist of it. I've got it all rammed back in there now and placed where it should be. So I'm gonna hit it with some zip ties, clips, self-tapping screws, whatever I can find. Get it secured nicely, and then I'll show you guys the final product. All right, guys, it's all in there now. So I was able to use some factory clips here on the outside, and then you can see there's a self-tapper with a washer. I did a few self-tappers and washers in the back. And then underneath the front here, I was able to get one original clip in, and then I did a few doubled up zip ties. So that's good and solid. I was also able to use a new clip for the lower splash shield and fender liner connection. And back here, I actually took the mud flap off, and I do have 1 or 2 screws behind the mud flap to reinforce the inner fender. And then I actually had to fix the lower clip here in the mud flap, because when I hit that tire, it had bent the crap out of it and ripped it all out. So everything is nice and super solid and back where it should be. Up here, I just left it overlapped. It actually, the upper side is overlapped onto the bottom side. It's not zip tied or nothing, but it's secure enough that it's going to keep most of the rocks and snow and crud out of there. So another job well done. I guess next we're going to move on to maybe the motor mount, which I'll give you guys my quick and easy DIY way of stiffening the factory mounts. And then obviously we got to take that Hasport mount out. But to do that, unfortunately, the skid plate, you can see the skid plate is in the way. Can't get to any of that. So I gotta get the skid plate off so that we can get the mounts out. I got the skid plate off the bottom, and I got the billet mount out. You can see there's a difference between the billet and the factory. But I want to show you guys a cheap way of making your stock mounts stiffer. So I know a lot of guys will go out and buy like whatever windshield, my camera just glitched. I know a lot of guys will go out and buy like the windshield polyurethane and fill them up, and then blah blah blah, you gotta wait for it to harden, and that does stiffen them up. But with this method, you don't have to go out to the store and buy anything. You just gotta distract your missus. Maybe put on a silly TV show or something, some type of reality garbage on Netflix. She'll be so in the zone with that, you can sneak into the kitchen and you steal an IKEA cutting board or similar, one of them nice thick ones like this. And then you can see this one's already chopped up because I made some strut spacers out of it. But anywho, we're gonna cut little chunks out of this, and then we use them to fill the voids in here. You just gotta hammer them in, basically. All right, now that we've moved our upper mount, we'll also put some cutting board in there, and hopefully we'll stiffen both mounts, making it feel decent. As you can see here, I've rammed those pieces I just cut in there. Sometimes I taper them on the one end just to make them easier to start, and then once they start you can hammer them in with a chisel or whatever and they stick in there pretty good. So that's with just 3 chunks of cutting board in there. And you can see this is a stock mount, right? With no inserts in it. You can see I can deflect that pretty easily. Put it in our custom cutting board mount, and look, you can see I can barely deflect that. I can just a touch, but not much. Whereas I can deflect this one pretty darn far. So it's a pretty effective way to stiffen up your mounts for no money, and it doesn't make them so stiff that it feels like you're running a solid mount. You still have a little bit of compliance. I've done this over the years with lots of different types of cars and it works like a charm. So I'm going to get this other mount knocked out off camera and then we'll move on to the next thing. It's our upper mount, all cutting board up. I already showed you the lower mount, so time to just get these things in there, I guess. So I don't think I'm going to bolt the upper mount in because that'll allow me to tilt the motor more. So I can bolt the lower mount in first and then I'll come back up here and throw the bolts into this guy. So I also have the front motor mount near the radiator disconnected, and I find that to actually be a pretty good spot to stick a pry bar in. So you can tilt this motor forward as possible. Just shimmy this mount back in here. Which isn't bad with a stock mount, but it can be a little tough once you get an aftermarket mount or a stiffened stock mount. It can be a little trickier. We're gonna loose. Okay, our skid plate is back on. I think we are done underneath the car. The only thing I'm going to do, while it's still jacked up, is rotate these two tires front and back. And then... and then. Okay, I just put the center console back in the car, as you can see, and I reinstalled the stock shift knob, and I just used this ratty boot that I had laying around. Because, you know, it goes with the theme of the car. So, that's installed. But, while I was in there, I realized that under the factory amp, there's a little plug-in that was not connected. So I plugged that in, and then I thought to myself, I don't know, like, sometimes circuits borrow the same grounds from other circuits, or power, blah, blah, blah. So, there was no SRS module in this car, so I just plugged in a junky one that I had, just in case that was affecting the stereo. So I don't know if it was either that or that other connector I found, but I just hooked up the battery, punched in the radio code, and I got a working stereo. So that's pretty sweet. It obviously doesn't have a sub. I showed you guys earlier that the sub was missing. So I just capped the wires for that. I'm not going to bother putting a sub in it. What for? It's got a working stereo. That's sweet. Now, if someone wanted to daily drive this as their winter beat or whatever, they can listen to tunes while they're driving. So that's a win-win. I think basically that leaves us with, we got to change the steering wheel to the uglier one. Need to retorque the wheels and tires, and then it needs to be detailed. But yeah, we're getting there. It is now nighttime, as you can see, so my steering wheel is out in one of my other cars and it's raining out, so I'm probably not going to do that tonight. I'll do that tomorrow, but I might tonight start detailing the interior, at least get a start on it. Why not, right? Alright guys, as you just seen there, we gave the interior a good vacuum and a good wipe down. And although it doesn't look like it's SEMA ready, it is much, much cleaner looking. So that's a win. Not a nicer place to be now. It was a little gross to get an hour before. So yeah. Still a few little things to check off the list, but I'm gonna leave those till tomorrow. It's getting late out. I'm gonna get some sleep, so catch up with you guys in the morning. All right, time's done its thing. It's now morning. So back to work on this thing. I think we're gonna do the steering wheel first, because that's way too nice for this car. And then something I thought of at the end of the night last night that I didn't do was, after disconnecting that coolant hose for the cold air intake and having it drain on the ground, I topped it back up, but I'm probably gonna have to bleed it again. There's probably air in it, so maybe after we get the wheel installed, we will jack it up so that we can put the front end up into air, and we'll turn the heater on and let it run and try and burp, give it a burp. And then maybe we'll even wash this car. That's right, I said it. I might actually treat the rally car to its first ever wash. Here's the wheel out of the silver car. You can see it's got your typical wear spot there. Since I'm probably going to be fixing up the silver car, I thought it'd be nicer to put the better wheel in the silver car, and this wheel that's a little damaged can go in the rally car because, well, you know. But I think I'm going to hit this with a knife blade just to try and clean it up as best I can. It's by no means restored, but that just cleans up the loose edges anyway, so let's go ahead and install this in the car. Boom, all done. So, as you can see off camera, I did a F1 conversion to it. It sharpens up pretty good. If you're looking for your own race wheel, you know, hit up my Shopify. Just kidding, I don't have one. I just thought of one other thing for funsies I could show you guys how to do for free, is how to make your ugly shift boot less ugly, and how to make your ugly shift knob also less ugly. Now, keep in mind, this isn't going to be transformative results, but it will be an improvement and it will cost you nothing. So let me pop these off and I'll show you. So as you can see here, hopefully the GoPro focuses on this, but you can see it's really scratched up. You can no longer see the red inside any of the letters. And yeah, it's just overall pretty dull and ugly looking. So what we're going to do is put it on this shifter extension that I have. You can use a bolt or whatever, as long as it's the right thread. You just want to thread it in there until it stops. And then you're going to take a cordless drill, put that in the chuck, so it's kind of like you now have a little lathe. And then I take some 1500 grit, 2000 grit, heck, even 600 if it's really bad. But whatever, you take some sandpaper and some spray wax. You don't have to use spray wax. It could be water, soap and water, whatever you got really. It's just lubricant. So what I do is I spray the top of the shift knob, take a little chunk of sandpaper, and then I just start wet sanding it. Now you don't want to wet sand this piece because it's leather, you'll ruin it. This one's already ruined, but it's just something you want to be careful of. And yeah, you just want to add light pressure as you spin it. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Whether it's somewhere good, I don't know, but we'll take a little bit of just, this is a medium cut, like cutting polish, but any type of cut will do. Doesn't really matter, just whatever you got. This is an exact science. And we'll just run the shift knob into that. Alright, you can see we've got some shine back, but this one was pretty rough, so it's hard to get it even, it would seem. But anyways, I'm gonna keep going off camera. You guys get the idea. You just wanna wet sand polish until you kind of get to a desired finish. And yeah, this one's coming out better, but I'll show you guys the final product, see how it turns out. Alright, as you can see there, I spent a couple more minutes polishing it, and yeah, it's looking pretty awesome. I don't know how well the GoPro picks up on it, so maybe I'll take a before and after photo comparing it to another old knob. I could spend more time and get this thing rate dialed, but this shift knob is just so rough, it's not really worth it. I just kind of wanted to show you guys that with a few random products in your shop in a couple minutes, you can actually make these look pretty decent. So, the next thing is to make this boot look better for free. Sorry, not vehicles next to my house. So, when you get in the car, the first thing you see is all this white, right? And it just looks kind of crappy. Well, there's nothing I can really do to make the leather magically come back, but what you can do is fill in the white here with a black Sharpie. Anyways, you keep going around like that until you get all the little white spots filled in with black Sharpie. I'm gonna try and find a better one because this one's kind of dying. And anyways, it doesn't attract to the eye quite as much once it's inside the car. So I will continue doing that, and then I'll catch up with you guys and show you what it looks like back in the car. There you have it. You can see this would normally be all white, so yeah, you can still notice it, but it definitely doesn't jump out to your eye quite as much as it used to. So small improvement for 5 minutes work anyway. Okay, let's check this thing up and bleed the coolant. Since you guys seen me in the last clip, I went and insured this thing, and I drove it out to my buddy's shop so that we could put it on his scanner, so we could do an idle relearn procedure. What happens with these cars is when you swap the engine in them, the throttle body isn't calibrated to the existing ECU, so there's a bit of discrepancy there, and when you drive it, it like really exaggerates the rev hang between gears. It actually like rev rate up in between gears, so it just makes the drivability kind of crappy for like gentle normal driving. But if you're driving aggressively, like wide open throttle and shifting at 8,000, it's fine. But just for like daily driving type stuff, it makes it kind of annoying. So I never actually fixed that when I put this motor in this car originally, because I didn't really care. For rallycross, I was mostly driving it at full throttle, and it wasn't really a daily, and I didn't think this motor would stay in this car, so I didn't bother doing it. But now that I'm going to sell it to someone, I figured I might as well do that so the drivability is a little nicer. And since I insured it, I think I'm going to drive it as a daily until I sell it. Why not? Might as well enjoy it a little bit, right? Hit up some dirt roads and do some toge and whatnot. Another thing I wanted to mention, because you guys are probably like, Rob, you said this thing is super rusty. Why are you selling it to somebody? I will be 100% clear and transparent to whoever buys this car that it is rusty. I will not let this thing leave my driveway unless they are completely in the know how rusty the shell is. I'm going to be very open about that. I'm also basically going to just sell the car for the cost of the engine swap, the wheels and tires because they're brand new, and the lift kit. I'm just trying to get my money back out of it. I'm not trying to make any money on it. So basically I will advertise it as, yes, it's a running driving car, the shell is junk, has a good drivetrain, come get it. So whoever buys it, if they want to part it out, cool. If they want to use it for rallycross, even cooler. If someone wants to use it as a winter beater, it would be kind of fun to use it as a winter beater, get some enjoyment out of it, and then in the spring find something cooler to put the motor and trans into, right? And then basically you're getting a free winter beater, but you're paying for a swap for another car or something like that, right? You whoever purchases it won't have trouble getting their money back out of it if they part it out or if they want to use the swap. So that's kind of the idea behind it. I know I said I was going to wash this thing in the last clip, but I've had a moment of clarity and realized it looks better dirty than clean, so I'm not going to clean it. But I might give the windows here a nice little Windexing so they can actually see out of them, because before I started working on this thing, it was parked under my maple tree, which it's fall. So it had a few inches of leaves on it and all the glass is super dirty. So it'd be nice to clean that so I can see out of it. And then one more thing I want to do, since I'm dailying it and lights on the dash annoy me. It has, I don't have the key right now, but it does have an SRS light on, and it does have an ABS light on. So the ABS light I already blocked off a while ago when I started driving it because I didn't want to look at it, but I don't know why I didn't block off the SRS light. So I'm going to disable that so I don't have to look at the lights. But that is another thing I will let the future owner know, that it does have a SRS code and an ABS code. I just don't want to look at the lights. I mean, on that note, I mean, maybe it would be nice to have a functioning SRS system, I suppose, but the ABS in a rally car for dirt and snow, you don't really want ABS. Like, if it did work in this car, I would disable it anyways, because you can't really left foot brake or do any of that stuff with ABS being intrusive. So anywho, I babbled enough. Why don't we clean these windows, and then maybe I'll take you guys for a little burn ski in it so you can hear the VTEC. It actually sounds pretty good with the intake on it. And then I think we'll close out this video. Alright guys, I just want to show you for instructional purposes what I'm doing here. You can see I've taken the cluster apart, and you pull off this backing and it exposes all your LEDs. So all you actually need to do, so you don't have to stare at that LED, is you ball up a piece of tape, stick it in the hole right there, and then you put this back over the tape. You'll no longer get that light shining through. Now, I can't stress enough that this is a greasy way to do things. That's not how I operate. I like to fix cars properly. But this car being sold as is what it is, I just don't want to stare at the lights, which is why I'm doing this. And I will make sure the new owner knows that those lights aren't working. In fact, when I put the cluster back in the car, I'm going to show you guys a way to check. And it's something you should always do when you buy a car, is check to see if someone's disabled those lights. Because I've had it happen to me, and I've seen it happen to other people. In my case, I bought a car and someone covered the check engine light. I later found that the car had an illuminated check engine light, but was covered by tape, because I wasn't smart enough at that time to check to see if someone had done this. So I'll show you guys here in a sec, once I get this back together, how to check and make sure that someone is not trying to screw you over by hiding those lights. Alrighty guys, dash is back together. I'm going to turn the key on here. Now you'll notice no SRS light came on, right? But you see all these other light indication lights come on. So every time you cycle the key when you turn on a car, all the warning lights should light and then they go away. So when you're looking at one of these cars, look to make sure that that SRS light illuminates, and look to make sure the ABS light illuminates, look to make sure the check engine illuminates. You want all of that to illuminate when you turn the key on. Like I said, no SRS light. That's an obvious indication someone's covered that up. There should be an ABS light over here. It's not lighting up because someone's covered it up. In this case, myself. So I know it sounds like a simple thing, but like I said, I bought cars and I've overlooked that. So now when we start the car, you can see No lights. I mean, that one is e-brake and one is seatbelt. Those two will go off as soon as I start driving. But like I said, don't do this stuff. It's greasy. People do this and sell cars and say there's no codes. This is another great reason why when you go to look at a car to take a OBD2 scanner and check the car for codes. But again, in my case, this car is a hoopty. I'm basically selling it as a swap, and I will let whoever buys it, they will know that those lights are indicated. I will disclose that. So enough of me yammering. Let's take this thing for a rip so you guys can hear the VTECs. All the VTECs. Alright, I'll quit teasing. Let's listen to that VTEC crossover. Gravel road might be a little noisy. Alrighty guys, I'm not going to rip around this gravel road too much. It's still daylight and there might still be people on the road, so I'm not going to drive too hard, but I'll go give you guys one more VTEC rip down on the pavement, and then I think that's going to be it for this video. So that's going to do it for this episode on the rally car, which might be the last episode on the rally car. I'm going to throw it up for sale now. I think I'm going to ask, probably put it up for 4,000 Canadian or best offer. And yeah, that's probably a little over $3,000 US kind of dealio. And yeah, see if anyone's interested in it. But even just going for that quick little boot with it, man, that thing's a fun car. I would really like to build a better version, but how much money do you want to put into a car you're going to beat down a gravel road? I don't know. Anyways, thanks guys for watching. Hope you're enjoying the 8th gen content, and consider subscribing if you are. If not, catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.